Determined to live with certain principle way. I remember this is 30 some years ago. I met a guy named Jerry working in a small company in Los Angeles when I moved from Japan. And we spent 6, 7 years together to improve. And he was the supervisor of the assembly area. And at one point he said something like, anybody can shine when things are going well. It is a difficult time. We have to work hard to make sure that we do the right thing, or something of that nature. I retain that view, and it pops up every now and then. And probably I'm in a more shining phase, if I'm not mistaken. Tomorrow is unknown. The past is already past. It has to be lived in every moment. And in there, I thought about his word, but also I thought about this principle way. And when I talk about the principle way of living, what is that? One notion that pops up is the idea of no action, Wu-Wei. This is a Taoism, which is the way of life. I think Tao Te Ching is a very good example. Tao was explained, the way was explained by Lao Tzu. And when I went to Beijing and found the word Wu-Wei, no action in where the government takes place in the forbidden city of Beijing, I was quite surprised that they have that posted there. I was there for the United Nations Development Program to share some ideas based upon my books. And I gave a speech using that. I don't remember exact sequence of why I wanted to do it, but I wanted to confirm some basis to share. The Chinese people with background, I'm from Japan, learning from China, the scriptures and documents and stuff like that, and to share something fundamental in this program. I wanted to say something at the foundation is kind of like a spirit of the principle way, based upon way. And what's that no action? And connected to Jerry's point, I was reflecting on that. And then the reason for that is that when we have the situation going on, the future pops up and what to do with, in this case and that case, or the past would be hanging around and what have I learned and what did I do anything right and what's the lessons learned. That's our mind functioning. And I think it's meaningful even to share these thoughts in YouTube, just to reflect on the situation and confirm the basis. The principle way is the basis. And if I were to characterize what that is, along with this notion of no action, which is the same as I see it, having a calm and quiet mind. Mind settles, be quiet. You can listen to your heart beating, the life energy in that quietness and spaciousness and openness. No mind. When mind moves, sometimes we don't realize it's moving and occupying our mind, in our mind. Then you get lost into this way and that way. And I use the word, this is 20 some years ago, and I still practice in some way or the other. I call it 1 minute meditation. After going through Vipassana and having this awakening experience, I wanted to bring that into my daily life. when things are happening in a dynamic manner. In Zen, they talk about having some tool to work with the dynamic situation of life. Dochu no kufu. Kufu is figuring out. Dochu is in the dynamic situation. And the principle, as explained by the Zen master Hakuin, is based on the same point of living with the principle way. Specifically, what it means is that within that dynamic nature of life, the mind moves this way and that way. When you notice, and that's the critical point, that you are getting into the confused state or too much involved in some thinking, you want to kind of stop everything and go back to the basics. Eckhart totally talk about the here and now, the power of now, just being in the state of being. So 1 minute meditation is like I remember practicing quite often in those days. Say I have a meeting in the company and the conversation is going on and something that you may not be interested or the point of discussion is not as important, if I may say so, because things happen and you may want to keep your attention but not losing your state of mind. And I use the idea of 1 minute meditation just to observe what's going on, but also keep your mind calm and quiet, like a meditation. Meditation in the controlled setting is called Seichu no Kufu. The Kufu is figuring out the way with the quiet setting compared to the dynamic setting. So you practice in the quiet setting, in meditation sitting usually, but also you can bring that into the dynamic setting, as in the case I mentioned in the meeting, and or in the hotel, or in the transportation, in the cab, or whatever the situation is. And I do more and more of those without thinking, because once you notice that your mind is going on its own without the rest of my being connected to it, then you want to be assured at the basis, practicing the principle way based upon, you can call it sila, samadhi, panna, right conduct, and have samadhi, calm and quiet mind, so that you have the wisdom to work on, which connect to the Wu-Wei, no action, is the same as calm and quiet mind, or samadhi. Lots of words. But the principle is the same, as if to listen to your heart. Be with your being at the moment. The power of now. Have the spaciousness in your mind. So 1 minute meditation is just the observation of your sensation, breathing, aware of what's going on with calm and quiet mind. But I also think about or practice this idea when the mind is bothering or moving on itself, and there's no point of going with it because it starts to spin or repeat, or endless connection from one thought bringing another thought and another thought, as if no end to it. And when you notice it, that's of course the important thing. If you don't notice it, you keep on going. But if you train to be in this calm and quiet mind practice or meditation, and more you do it, you can notice much more faster, and you can sort of plug in the hole. Things are starting to leak, and it starts to move on its way, but you want to maintain the principle of calm and quiet mind. So you want to plug that hole. So you can create the image in practicing this 1 minute meditation. In this case, it's kind of like having a reference within your space of calm and quiet mind, or in your mind, to look at it. And that reference is plugging the hole of your mind running on its own without the rest being engaged, heart not engaged, and quiet and calm mind engaged. So as soon as you notice it, you can imagine that you can plug in the hole, or just practice this 1 minute meditation. So you retain that spaciousness, emptiness of mind, no mind, calm and quiet state that you can connect with your being, and you bring that into your daily life in a dynamic setting when things are happening. Things happen externally, and you reflect on that in your mind, and the mind movement disturbance, you can notice it, and you plug in the hole. So delusion, the monkey mind, the movement of the mind, we need to notice it to plug in. So it's a paradox, but that's the name of the game, because if you don't notice it, you keep on going, and you may waste your energy repeating your thought, or endless journey of your mind moving this way and that way, jumping around the monkey mind. You've done it, I've done it, still do it. It's the mind popping up and want to, show the reason of existence from the mind point of view, and clogging up the spaciousness with those thoughts that disturbs you, and therefore you lose the basis, the core, the connection, the principal way. As a human being with brain and the mind to occupy and be able to do something good, but also if we don't use it well, it can give us a trap into that and get confused. You're alone in this universe with your mind playing a game, but you want to navigate your life without much disturbance of the mind, but using the brain or the mind so that you can be creative, have wisdom to deal with the situation coming from externally, but internally generated delusionally state. So you can align the principal way from inward and then connect it to the outward event of what's happening, which keeps changing, impermanence. But like in surfing, that's one example, you keep paying attention to what's going on. And as the environment changes, you cannot you can use the mind, but usually it's too late when it comes to surfing because you need to respond with no mind. That's the mastery, internal state of what we can do in surfing, or not just in surfing, but when you are working in the meeting, to be productive. If you lose with the conversation, which may not be going anywhere, you might as well to notice what's going on, but retain your calm and quiet mind. So you don't lose the whole picture. So in a way, your mind is engaged in something, you notice it because the conversation goes on with certain ideas, one after the other. But you can also see with better perspective of what is producing in that setting for the benefit of what you can contribute, or for the group to find the better direction So you notice what's going on, but you're still trying to retain the calm and quiet mind, but not too engaged in it. This situation happens all the time. So the meditation in sitting is a controlled setting that you can train your mind to be quiet and open. Learn the spaciousness, learn how the physiology, the heart beating and the sensation and breathing and the peace to come with it. And bring that into life when the dynamic situation is changing. I talked about the black dot exercise, how you do it to monitor it. I talked about the life profile in a periodic review of how we are processing in certain area of our life, living truthfully and work and hobby and relationship, health and finance, those few elements that I talked about. So it's a reflection of what's going on from moment to moment, the daily monitoring of the black dot, and then every month or 3 months, whatever way of monitoring of the activities in your internal state of the mind in relation to those 5 or 6 points that I talked about. So there are various mechanisms and checklists and the processes to assure that the principal way is being exercised in a dynamic setting and also in a controlled setting, as in the typical sitting meditation. So the point of this was just the reflection of various activities, but at the core of 1 minute meeting or all these activities I talked about is the core being state, which can be represented as a non-action, counterintuitive word. But because of a non-action, you see the action of what you can in a delusional way or in a productive way, which is like a wisdom, bringing into the wisdom into our life, utilizing the brain power in a positive direction. Long statement of all the complexities, work, and whatever is happening in life. But in there is the quiet state, calm state that is eternally there, that we can connect to. Sometimes we may need to plug the hole, and you may succeed to regain the calm and quiet mind, and keep practicing.